Jack would, we'd get to some city, like we were playing somewhere like in, Houston or wherever it was. And he would go out and they would scout out, they'd find like, Manuel's Tire Shop or some place. They'd come in, they said, can we do a little short, like 15-minute thing here, like this? And so the guys are going, sure, yeah, okay, get some payment for this and stuff like that. So then what they would do is the crew would go out, set up amplifiers at Manuel's Tire Shop, right? And people who were following Jack, on Third Band or whatever it was, they'd get a post or text saying, Manuel's Tire Shop, 2:00. And this is like, at 1:30 or something. And everybody would go like jump in their cars and go over to this tire shop. And then all these people would be at the tire shop, right? And the van would come up like this, the doors would open, we come running out, grab the instruments, play 3 or 4 songs, stop, jump back in the van and disappear. And he did that at like candy shops and tire shops and, other just little, some place that you'd never expect it to be.
Yeah. If you're a diehard fan, that would be like the coolest damn experience ever.
Yeah. There's just so many stories like that, He was married, Jack was married at that point to Karen Elson, who was a supermodel, but also quite a good writer and very into like British folk pop and stuff like that. And she put out an album, which I wasn't aware of it, put out an album called The Ghost Who Walks, I think it was called. So I got called because of some connection between somebody who knew somebody, but they needed somebody really to play like pedal steel, fiddle, something else. And the tour manager called me up, who was Jack's tour manager also. I had a couple shows in Europe she had, and she was doing Fashion Week in New York City. And to put together a band, and I didn't, I was dimly aware of, White Stripes and this and that. But anyway, it was Karen. So I came in and started rehearsing at Third Man Records with Karen for this. And Jack came in, and that's how I met him. I remember we were rehearsing there, and Jack's like saying, listen, and Karen goes, do you have any advice for us, Jack? Anything you can say like that? And he goes, and Jack says, when you come out on stage, come out with your balls swinging. And he looks at Karen, he goes, you too. And he walks out. And then Jack at that point was doing this thing called the Blue Series, which were 45s that he would produce, and artists would come through town and stuff like that. And I got called to do these sisters from Scandinavia called First Aid Kit. And so I got called to come in and play pedal steel. He was doing a lot. At that point, I became of a group of like a couple of musicians that were like the house band. So I just started playing with different, and I did like a whole bunch of them. I mean, of these 45s with different people, like Insane Clown Posse and a First Aid Kit and Beck and all the stuff, which was great, And usually you'd get the call, you'd get a call like, can you come in today at 3:00, or rarely you'd say, can you come in tomorrow? Right at the I forget who it was, but very early on, I had gone up to, we have the other house in Southern Illinois, which is 3 hours from here, where my wife grew up. And I had, by myself, for whatever reason, I went up to the house and I'd gotten up there. I was there for like 2 hours up at the house. And I got a call from the engineer and saying, hey, can you come in at da-da-da today? We're doing whoever it was, I can't remember now. And I went and I looked at my watch and I went, if I get in the car, I can be back in Nashville in 3 hours. And I said, well, I can't come that early. I said, sorry. I didn't want them to know that I was out of town. Yeah. And they said, can I come in at 3:00? It was that, and they go, yeah, that's fine, 3:00. I said, okay. I hung up the phone, I jumped back in the car, and I drove all the way back down to Nashville because I didn't want them to know I wasn't in town. But and all sorts of. And another time, I had left to go. Christy Rose and I had shows in Ohio, and I had taken off. I was like 2 hours out driving toward Ohio, and Josh Smith calls me up and he goes, "Hey, can you come in today? Like we're doing a recording with Blue Series." And I said, "No." I said, "We got shows in Ohio. I'm on the road." And I said, "Who is it?" And he goes, "You're not gonna like it." And I said, "Who?" "Tom Jones." And it's like I miss Tom Jones, but I did a whole bunch of them. And then in the process, Jack started doing his own stuff with us, like meaning that became Blunderbuss, the album, which was his first quote solo album, meaning like just him, not as part of a band, not White Stripes. And it slowly became part, and then it became part of it turned into that album. And then eventually I was working with Karen and doing some stuff, and then started working with Jack, and of course I was recording with Jack, and then Jack started in 2012. He went out on tour with two bands, a girl band and a guy band, both traveling together, where you would not know until day of show who was playing, and he did this insane tour, which was really exciting and great.
What was the reasoning on not letting the band know?
He wanted to, because it had never been done before, because it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever financially. Two, that the fans would not know what band it was. Three, if you alternated the bands, then you'd know who was playing. So it couldn't be all. It had to be shifted around. Like sometimes the guys would play twice in a row, something like that. Four, like when the stage was set up, they would cover everything with blue tarps. Well, because if you see the way Carla had the drums set up or Daru had the set, you'd know who was playing. So he had to keep it like as suspenseful as possible. And he did a lot of people think that it was like that the travel, and we all traveled together, the girls and the guys on a bus. And it was just the dynamic of it. He just wanted to, in a very good way. I mean, it's not like he was, and he just would call it right before lunch. You'd just get a call. He goes, he'd say, it's the buzzards or the peacocks. He'd say, it's the buzzards, it's the peacocks. And, you could go to Paris and you're not playing. You just, you hang out, you go to the show, have dinner, and then go to Germany or whatever. But it was really exciting and unusual. And I remember we played at Roseland which closed down years ago, but Roseland, the dance place, the upstairs dance hall in New York City, it was like famous, there's recorded, and it's where big bands played. Roseland is a really long room like this. And what they had done is, since they've had music there. I mean, you put it down at the end of the stage was built here at the end of, but the original stage is in the middle of the room on this side like this. So, so it's long like this, but then here's the original stage where they had some tables set up and everything on the original stage. So Jack walks in, we're going to do sound check, and it's the girls playing. So he walks in and he's like looking at it and he goes, "Hey, you know what I'd like to do? We'll play here with the girls, but then is there a way you can come around the back and get into this stage?" And he goes, and they figure out, yes, there is. So the girls play, and he always did an encore, a long encore a lot of times. The girls play, then he meets the guys, us, we come around, and the curtains are drawn on the stage, of which there's tables sitting and people sitting at tables. Is like they had set up the entire another sound system, set up everything, which means that the whole crew had to run an entirely separate, thing for this to happen. And so the encore was that everybody's like this, and suddenly they turn and the curtain opens and the people on the tables get kind of pushed away, and Jack appears with the guys as the encore on a separate stage.
Wow.
I mean, it was like, and I met somebody on the road who said he was because he was like, if you're in the long room, you're way back here, but that's where this stage is, right over here. And he said, Like, and he was right in front of that stage, like, but way back from this stage. So that when he turned and he said it was the greatest concert he's ever been to. He's saying the most exciting thing he's ever seen. And that's very Jack. You know, he's just great. I mean, he's really, and he's great to work with, just wonderful.
That's a very high level of commitment to giving the audience something special.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he would always think of things to do that were just not been done before, or just why not try this? You know, I mean, I can story after story of stuff that he's done that is just, you know, off the chart, amazing. You know.
Yeah. I don't know if a lot of people know this watching, but there's like young bands or artists playing in garages or house parties that he would find out about and have them record a 7-inch or something. Mm-hmm. I just think that's beautiful way to say I am part of this community and I want to support it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I don't know that a lot of people out there know that. Oh,
yeah. He's very, very much so. I mean, like he himself was driving in his car, and then, you know, Pokey Lafarge. Okay. So Pokey Lafarge, a recording by Pokey Lafarge comes on, and he's going, "Who is this guy?" Like he's going, "Who is this guy?" And my friend Paul Birch and I, like Pokey used to come. He was living in St. Louis, and he would come down and open up for us at the Old Family Wash in Nashville. So I kind of knew who, but anyway, Jack's listening to it, goes, "Who's this guy?" And he himself, Jack, after hearing him, calls up, finds out who Pokey Lafarge, where his management, calls him up and offers him to open up shows for him on the tour. Because he himself thought it was so cool. Like he goes, "I heard him on the radio and I thought, that guy's should open up shows," which he did. Yeah. He would do that kind of stuff all the time.
Which is beautiful, because typically there's these management or agent relationships that really dictate things like that, and to have an artist
Jack's very hands-on, like with the, you know, the art, like the way the stage looked, how everything, that's really all him. You know, he decides that, you know, artistically.
There's a clip on YouTube of you guys playing a Memphis Jug Band song with Lil Nas.
Yes.
What do you remember about that?
Oh, that was in 2013, because Jack toured in 2012. And in 2013, he and T-Bone got involved with producing this. At that time, it was the BBC from London. It was doing this thing called American Epic. And it was about roots music, American roots music, early recording, et cetera, et cetera. It was a whole documentary that was done, and eventually got picked up by public broadcasting. But at that time it was the BBC. So there was a studio in Hollywood which had an old Scully lathe machine that was the machine. It was not the machine. It was the machine that recorded like Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey. So so for those who don't know, it's a machine. Scully lathe machine that's how they would cut like a recording with one mic or one horn at that point, and it would go in and it would cut, you know, the master, and that would be that's where you would press your 78ths from. Yeah, and so Jack got involved, and this is, though T-Bone was involved, this was like, you know, Jack was way more involved with it, you know. I mean, he was really involved with it. So you'd get all these people who would come in and record, and we were the house band, myself, Lily Mae, Rishi, Dominic Davis, and myself. We were sort of the house band. And you'd go to LA and just hang out. And if they wanted you, you come over to the studio. And it was, you know, and we recorded with Taj Mahal, Nas, you know, I mean, Rhiannon, you know, just a whole bunch of people. And it was so great. So you'd have to, you know, you have to figure out, if you're doing a band or something, like where everybody is, because it was It operated with the very first electrical microphone, which was period correct. And we even recorded one straight with the horn, just a horn, you know. It was really great and exciting. And Nas came in, and Jack was saying, you know, he played him this Memphis jug band, you know, on the road. Yeah.
Which you grew up.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew this. So he listened to it. And if you listen to the original Memphis jug band recording, it's essentially, it is the forerunner, the beginnings of rap. It is, because it's actually, basically, he's almost rapping, even back then. And so Nas is like very good. He listens to it, and he's going, okay. So he kind of figures out his own way to do it, and we recorded it. And with me playing tenor banjo, which is one of my proudest moments, is to play with Nas on tenor banjo. And of course, it's all filmed. You know, they had this whole thing about filming it as well as recording it, and it was filmed for the documentary. If anybody's seen you can still see the whole American Epic thing. It's interspersed with all of these recordings being done and stuff like that. Yeah. Talking about things that Jack did, when we were in London at one of the time we were playing, and I think it was 2014 or 2015. But anyway, somehow Jack became aware that there's an old, there on the outskirts of where we were staying, there was this big, very large, essentially abandoned, or not abandoned, but just closed down, I should say, hospital/mental hospital that was right outside of London. So I forget how Jack, I said, you know, we had a day off or something. So he sets up like in this old hospital it's got all these weird corridors and stuff like that. And we go, you know, we get taken up there and we're like, oh, wow, this is really strange, you know, and it's, there's a large room in the beginning, and then you can go off into like offices and corridors like this, that they put up this sheet of opaque plastic covering, and behind the opaque plastic, the band, we all set up. There's an entire setup, and there's these smoke machines, like this smoke and weird things, very, you know, funhouse kind of looking, and people in London, you know, followers who are on they get this text. It said, you know, Third Man Records invites you to come to the something hospital on something to be evaluated for the something. It was this whole like, so all these people come at this appointed time, and they come in and they're met at the table, like met by there are people in there, like men and women wearing like lab coats, and they're invited in, and then like some of them are taken, like somebody's taken into a room, and there's a guy sitting behind a desk with like a big cage of rats, and he asks him a couple questions, makes notes, and he says, all right, you're excused. And it just, this whole thing goes on, and, you know, people are like giving cognitive tests, and people are but there's this wandering around, and finally they're all like in this main room, and we start playing, bashing out some incredibly loud rock thing, and the crew pulls down the plastic, and these people are turn around, and Jack's there playing. He plays then we played maybe two songs, and Jack's just like freaking out on the electric guitar. And finally, he like throws the electric guitar down, and he just drops to the floor, and he just starts writhing around on the floor, right? We knew, the band, what he was doing. The crew did not. So the crew, nor did the audience. And people were going, what's going on? At this point, an ambulance comes with lights going, comes up to the side, backs up to him. Guys come out with a stretcher. Jack's like freaking out. They tie him down onto the stretcher, carry him into the ambulance. The ambulance goes off with the siren going, and that's the end of the night. Now, I ask you, that's one of the most involved, I can't even fathom how, the involvement of that. Yeah. But I mean, as an artistic statement, it stands, that's pretty tall.